Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Siloam Inscription, the 700-year-old tunnel that confirmed the Bible. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 701 BC, the Assyrian army under Sennacherib marched toward Jerusalem. According to the Bible, King Hezekiah prepared the city's water supply by digging a tunnel through 533 meters of solid rock, connecting the Gihon spring to the pool of Siloam inside the city walls. In 1880, a boy playing in the tunnel found an inscription carved in the wall describing exactly how the tunnel was built. It is one of the few physical artifacts that directly corroborates a biblical narrative. What makes the Siloam inscription remarkable is not just its age. It is the specificity of what it records. The inscription describes tunnelers working simultaneously from both ends of the rock, listening for the sound of each other's pickaxes through the stone, and finally breaking through. The tunnel itself, which still carries water today, follows an S-shaped curve, exactly the kind of deviation you would expect from two teams working by sound alone. The inscription and the tunnel corroborate each other, and both corroborate the Bible. How much does a single tunnel change what we know about the historical accuracy of Scripture? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Archaeology is, by its nature, an incomplete science. We find only what survives, and what survives is determined not by importance, but by durability. Stone lasts, wood rots, metal corrodes, ceramics endure. The written word survives only if it is inscribed on stone or baked clay. Papyrus and vellum are hostages to humidity and fire. This means that every picture of the past, assembled from archaeological evidence, is a distortion, biased toward the materials that happen to last, rather than the activities that define the culture. With that caveat in place, the structures that do survive from the ancient world are sometimes inexplicable by any conventional model of the societies that built them. Find stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, fitted together with tolerances measured in millimeters, transported from quarries dozens of kilometers away, and raised to heights that challenge modern cranes. We find astronomical alignments so precise that they track the movements of specific stars over periods of thousands of years. We find architectural proportions that embed mathematical ratios, pi, phi. The Pythagorean theorem in civilizations that supposedly had no formal mathematics. The challenge these structures pose is not engineering alone. It is conceptual. How did people without our tools conceive of projects on this scale? How did they solve the organizational problems of feeding and coordinating tens of thousands of workers over decades? How did they transmit technical knowledge across generations without standardized notation? The buildings stand as proof that they did it. The question of how remains genuinely open. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns, in science, demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Siloam inscription, the 700-year-old tunnel that confirmed the Bible, is more extensive more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Hezekiah's tunnel runs beneath the city of David in Jerusalem for 533 meters, connecting the Gihon spring outside the ancient city walls to the pool of Siloam inside them. The tunnel was carved through solid limestone and follows a winding S-shaped path that archaeologists have confirmed is consistent with two teams excavating simultaneously from opposite ends. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Siloam inscription was discovered in 1880 by a schoolboy wading through the tunnel and noticing carved letters on the wall approximately 6 meters from the southern entrance. The inscription records the moment of breakthrough between the two tunneling teams and describes the workers hearing each other's picks through the rock and deviating toward the sound to meet. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The inscription was stolen and broken into pieces in 1891. The fragments were eventually recovered and are now held at the Istanbul Archaeological Museum, where they have been since the Ottoman period. Israel has repeatedly requested the inscription's return, but it has not been repatriated. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Hebrew text of the inscription is dated to the late 8th century BC by multiple independent epigraphers based on letter forms, spelling conventions, and grammatical features consistent with Iron Age IIB Hebrew. This dating places it in the reign of Hezekiah and is consistent with the biblical account in 2 Kings 20:20 and 2 Chronicles 32:30, both of which describe the tunnel. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the tunnel is still functional today and is one of Jerusalem's major tourist attractions. Visitors wade through water that remains cold year-round at depths ranging from ankle to waist height, depending on season and water levels from the Gihon spring. The tunnel's continued use for nearly 700 years is testimony to the quality of its original construction. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: Sennacherib's own military annals, preserved on clay prisms, now held at the British Museum and Oriental Institute in Chicago, describe his campaign against Judah and the siege of Jerusalem in terms that broadly correspond to the biblical account in 2 Kings 18-19. The Assyrian record does not claim to have conquered Jerusalem, which is consistent with the biblical account of the siege being lifted. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Siloam Inscription, the 700-year-old tunnel that confirmed the Bible. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the tunnel was built exactly as described in the biblical account by King Hezekiah around 701 BC in preparation for the Assyrian siege under Sennacherib. This is now the confirmed archaeological position, supported by the inscription, the tunnel's physical characteristics, carbon-14 dating, and epigraphy. The convergence of multiple independent lines of evidence is unusually complete by biblical archaeology standards. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the tunnel was an earlier construction that predated Hezekiah and was later attributed to his reign in biblical narrative to enhance his reputation as a defender of Jerusalem. This alternative was proposed before the full range of dating evidence was available and has since been effectively ruled out by carbon-14 dating of organic material in the tunnel's plaster lining. This theory is controversial and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Siloam Inscription is a later addition, not contemporary with the tunnel's construction, carved onto the tunnel wall at a later date to create a false historical record. This interpretation was raised in early debates about the inscription's authenticity and has been conclusively rejected by epigraphic analysis, confirming the inscription's letter forms are consistent with 8th century BC Hebrew. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Siloam Inscription, the 700-year-old tunnel that confirmed the Bible, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes carbon-14 dating of organic material preserved in the hydraulic plaster lining the tunnel walls gives a construction date of 700 BC plus or minus 30 years, fully consistent with the reign of Hezekiah. This radiocarbon date is independent of and corroborative of the epigraphic dating of the inscription, providing two independent physical dating methods that converge on the same period. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it, Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the tunnel's S-shaped course is physically consistent with two teams excavating simultaneously from opposite ends without a straight-line guide, exactly the method the inscription describes. A tunnel bored from one end only would not produce the characteristic deviations observed. The physical form of the tunnel corroborates the text of the inscription without either being dependent on the other. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Sennacherib's prism at the British Museum records his campaign against Hezekiah and describes Hezekiah as a prisoner in Jerusalem like a bird in a cage, but notably does not claim to have captured or destroyed the city, consistent with the biblical account of the siege being lifted. This independent Assyrian record confirms the historical context in which the tunnel was built and used. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Siloam Inscription, the 700-year-old tunnel that confirmed the Bible. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Hezekiah's tunnel is one of Jerusalem's most visited archaeological sites and one of the best preserved Iron Age hydraulic engineering works in the world. The Siloam inscription fragments remain in Istanbul despite ongoing Israeli requests for their return. Multiple independent dating methods, epigraphy, radiocarbon dating, and historical synchronism with Assyrian records now confirm the tunnel is an 8th century BC construction, making it one of the most thoroughly verified physical corroborations of a specific biblical narrative. Ongoing excavations around the Jihan Spring and Pool of Siloam continue to produce new finds, including a paved Herodian street discovered in 2004. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Siloam Inscription, the 700-year-old tunnel that confirmed the Bible, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Siloam Inscription ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.